Welcome to episode 12 of the 4 Out 1 in podcast with your host, George Hamilton III.
And Carlos Costas.
How you doing, bro? It's been a long time.
A long time, and man, it feels good to say that and to hear you introduce the podcast. I've been away from it from a while, but I'm ready to go.
That's what I like to hear. I mean, we've had a lot of stuff going on since I last recorded and since you've last been on here. So, I mean, I'm ready to get back into it. The draft just happened. So, I mean, we'll get into that. And I mean, I didn't talk about the finals because I was kind of busy as well. So, I mean, that's what we can get into to start off this episode. What was your thoughts on game 5 and 6 and the Warriors closing out?
Um, you know, my pick was 6 and 7. And I'll stand by that decision. I mean, I think that the Celtics had the tougher road to play the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Brooklyn Nets in playoff series up until this point. So I thought everything that they have accomplished, like it looked like even if they face adversity, they're going to get through it. Game 1 showed that. Game 3 showed that. And then once after they lost and the series split 2-2, then I really questioned, like, okay, Steph is a different animal right now. This man can carry a team to a championship, and I feel like that's what he did. Credit to Andrew Wiggins after the All-Star break, got a lot of slack for not putting up the numbers, but he showed up. Not in a way, I guess, that is super eye-catching, but in a way that he helped his team win big time. And congrats to Steph. As much as I do not like Steph for all the things that he has done to my favorite teams and all the hate that he gets, and I'm one of the Steph Curry haters, if you want to put it like that, but I cannot, as a fan of basketball, I cannot say anything bad, and he has all my respect.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you know, I called it. You texted me after the game was over saying that I was a quote unquote genius. But as I said when I predicted the finals, I wasn't surprised that the Warriors were going to not win in 6. Maybe it could have went 7, but as I said, Steph is undeniably, he's got to be in the top 10. I don't see how he cannot be in the top 10 all time after that finals performance. That was probably one of the best, probably since maybe, I guess you can say Braun of 20, or well, I guess you could say Giannis last year, but in terms of like complete game performances, I'd say probably since like Kawhi in 2019. And then Wiggins showed up. He did all the little hustle plays and the stuff that didn't show up on the box sheet. Same with Kevon Looney, played well in the Dallas Mavericks series, and it carried over into the finals against the Celtics. And I mean, Jordan Poole, while he didn't have the greatest finals series, I feel like he got some experience. He's now an NBA champion, and all the role players they brought in last offseason for this season, I mean, it all paid dividends in the end. I'm curious how they're going to figure out the whole payroll situation, considering they have to pay so many guys. But I saw an article saying that the league's owners are mad that the Warriors may have to pay, like, I want to say like close to 200 to 300 million dollars to keep everyone. But I'm like, most of those players are drafted, so I mean, you can't have a problem. It's not like they went out and spent money in free agency to sign all of the players. I mean, obviously they traded for Wiggins, and who else did they bring in? That's pretty much it. Everyone else is like drafted or signed in free agency for like the vet men. So I mean, I feel like if the Warriors are able to do it and all they did is draft and probably and trade for one player and brought in vet minimum contracts in free agency, I mean, they should be able to keep everyone. But as for the Celtics, they got away like throughout. I think game 4 was the killer, in my opinion. Losing that game the way they did, I think their confidence was shot. Jayson Tatum didn't play what I expected him to play, how I expected him to play in game 5 and 6. I mean, Jaylen Brown, I think I said it in the first or either the first recap of game 1 or either the recap of game 2 and 3. I said Jaylen Brown, he has great first quarters or great fourth quarters, but he doesn't play well in the second and third. And it showed in the last 2 games. He had a pretty good first quarters, but then was like basically non-existent in the middle half of the game, and then trying to claw their way back in the fourth quarter. I mean, that can only get you so far. Obviously, they were able to do it in game 1, but after that, it wasn't the right recipe, for lack of a better word. And I mean, obviously, they got games from Al Horford and Derek White in the first game, but they were pretty much non-existent throughout the rest of the series. And I feel like Tatum has a lot. Well, I should say Tatum and Brown have a lot to work on, but it's going to be interesting to see how they come back next season, because I feel like I won't say the whole ISO thing, it's not going to work, but they both play too much ISO ball at times, and that's what got them into trouble in the last 2 games of this series.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, and it kind of brings me back to the point. I think I talked to you about this, even though we didn't record. That like in the times that the Celtics were pretty down in the games against the Warriors, that I feel like the veteran presence of Al Horford and the grit and heart of Marcus Smart kind of, I don't want to say like stop the Warriors runs, but maybe like slow the bleeding just a little bit, or at least bring back some fight in Tatum and Brown, because from what I saw, I felt like Tatum and Brown, like the ISO ball you were saying, it was like turnover after turnover. And you could see by body language and everything that at one point Jayson Tatum looked like he was just trying to force it, and he was not getting away at all. And you could tell that he was frustrated. But if it was just like a loose ball that Marcus Smart had to bounce to stop a possession and just to reset everything, or Al Horford getting a little putback bucket, or just playing solid defense, just like the little things, the intangibles, I think showed the value in those two guys. When I think in previous years people questioned if Horford still has some in him, and if Marcus Smart is worth almost $20 million that I think he's being paid. So I just want to give credit to those guys as much as Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown get their credit. I think the role players of the Celtics, though they maybe didn't show up in everything as much as you wanted them to, but I think Derek White, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Robert Williams, Grant Williams, they all deserve the same amount of credit too.
Yep. I think we covered everything in the finals, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's time to move on to my favorite time of the year, probably after Christmas. NBA what? Draft.
Oh, we're not doing free agency?
Let's get to the draft first.
Okay,
before
that's fine.
We hit some free agency moves, because I know I want to touch on some things in the draft. I would say affects a good amount of what teams decide to do in free agency.
All right. Yeah, I agree. So I'll start sharing my screen. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So obviously the NBA draft was yesterday, June 23rd. To start off, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but Paolo Banchero went first overall, and that was a shock to many people. Last I saw, I think he was just, I don't gamble, but I do look at the odds and stuff like that. And last I saw, that was like 2 hours before the draft. I think when Woj said that like Paulo to the Magic wasn't like an unrealistic thing, he was like at plus 2,300. And obviously he went first overall. So that was like whoever took a gamble on that, it surely paid off. But I mean, I guess we're gonna say the picks by teams to instead of going 1 through 30 and then talking about it. Going by teams is probably the easier, I shouldn't say easier, but the more fair route, because then we could talk about every team's picks and what they did in order to kind of bolster their rosters to get ready probably for free agency and what they're going to do. But you want to start with Atlanta?
Yeah, so the Hawks, they came out of the draft with AJ Griffin out of Duke with the 16th pick. Um, they drafted Ryan Rollins out of Toledo at 44, traded him to Golden State, and they walked out with Tyrese Martin out of UConn. George, what do you think of Atlanta Hawks haul so far?
All right. So AJ Griffin, I mean, from the games I saw at Duke, he's not the greatest defender. I mean, obviously they still have DeAndre Hunter and John Collins, which doesn't look like they're going to be traded anytime soon, because the rumors were that John Collins might get traded for DeJounte Murray, which I thought was that those rumors started appearing like this week, like I want to say early as Tuesday. And then obviously you have the John Collins and DeAndre Hunter for Donovan Mitchell rumors that are still going on, but I don't think that they're going to get traded. If anything, I feel like AJ Griffin, as I said, while he's not the best defender, I think he can improve his shooting ability because Trae Young is probably going to have the ball in his hands most of the time. So I mean, if he can be a solid small version of PJ Tucker in a sense, not I'm not saying the defense has to be as great, but if he can defend and hit corner threes, I mean, he'll be solid. And Tyrese Martin, while you want to talk about that, because I honestly didn't watch him at UConn. So
Well, going back to AJ Griffin, I think the Hawks, in my head, I think that this was a great pick for the Hawks. AJ Griffin was mocked in the top 10 pretty much the whole year, even though he had his ups and downs at Dukes with injuries and stuff like that. I think his potential is still pretty high. I think a lot of people see him as a Jimmy Butler type, which I'm not opposed to that comparison at all. And I think it's going to be good for the Hawks and good for AJ Griffin to play with a guy like Trae Young that could set him up on that. I think AJ Griffin might have had one of the best 3-point percentages in college basketball this year on like a decent volume. So the shooting is there for the most part, and I think he has the work ethic to put in more effort on the defensive side, like what you're saying. And Tyrese Martin at 51, I think Golden State played that really well. Tyrese Martin, more of a solid shooter, almost like a veteran type of guy, a pretty surefire, I think, pick at 51 in the second round. I don't think you're drafting. I always feel like you always go two ways when you draft in the second round. It's you take whoever fell that has the high potential because it is a low risk, high reward situation, or you take a surefire thing. In this case, it's like a 3-and-D type of wing, which in this day and age is something that every team can never have enough of. So all in all, I think Atlanta Hawks, I think they came out pretty solid in the draft.
all right, and there was Ryan Rollins, who you were telling me about. They picked him up from Golden State in a trade. So you want to speak on that a little bit? Because I know this was a person you were high on.
Yeah, Ryan Rollins out of Toledo. I was telling George that he's one of the prospects I was looking at for the Clippers, which is both of our favorite teams. The Clippers to take at 43, the pick right before Ryan Rollins went. We'll talk about the Clippers later, but I like Ryan Rollins as a shot creator and a score first guard that has a lot of upside on the offensive end. He's pretty skilled, has a bag, athletic, can shoot the ball a little bit. And initially when I saw the Hawks traded for him, it made me think, because I know a lot of people, or I guess I've seen around that the Hawks maybe should address some shot creation and ball handling duties outside of Trae Young, but I don't see that as the case because Trae Young needs the ball in his hands to be successful. And even then, I'm a high believer in Sharif Cooper, even though he was a second round pick. I think he can handle the ball as well, and I think he's an NBA point guard. So I didn't really see the need to fit um, that role for the Hawks and trading him to the Golden State Warriors. I mean, you can't even say anything to the Warriors right now. I think the entire draft, we'll get to it, but I think they just went all upside and you can't complain. They're the defending champs. I don't think they need um, anything to kind of help their franchise. They literally came out on top. So
All right.
not the worst either way.
All right. I guess we can move on to Brooklyn. Obviously, we know they don't have any picks. I think that's due to the James Harden trade, if I'm not mistaken. But they picked up Alondes Williams, undrafted two-way player from Wake Forest. And I know you are also high on this prospect as well. So I mean, if you want to go into depth, you can.
Um, just for Alondes Williams, I don't really know how to describe his game. He's one of those guys that are just good at basketball. Kind of reminds me of like a jack of all trades, master of none type of guy. One of the best players in the ACC this year. And I think I knew that he was going to get undrafted, but I just like his game and I like watching him all year. And I knew that he's going to go undrafted, but I wanted him to go to a contender. Being the Brooklyn Nets, and I hope that he gets some playing time early because I think he could be a really good contributor in the league. I think it's a good drafted two-way pickup by the Nets, even though they had no draft picks. I think this is a pretty smart move.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into free agency talk late after this, but depending on what happens with Kyrie, I mean, they might have to pick up someone like they might have to develop maybe Alondes Williams and possibly Cam Thomas, because I mean, if Patty Mills does resign, I mean, yeah, he'll play the point guard, but at 30, I think he's like 34, 35. I mean, you don't want him to do that. You still want him to come off the bench. But I mean, having a guard that you can develop isn't the worst thing in the world. But I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are in a lot of trouble, but we'll get into free agency talk after. The third, I guess we'll move on to Boston. They had a one pick, which was JD Davidson from Alabama, and he was drafted 53rd. I mean, obviously, I knew him from high school and pretty much a YouTube channel I watched. But you want to go into depth on this pick?
Yeah, I mean, JD Davidson was kind of all over the place throughout the year on where he's going to be drafted early in the season. People were projecting him to be like a late first, and then he fell, all the way to 53. And I think the Celtics, I'm not sure if the Celtics are in the position to take to pick a fit player, like a player that fits a team need for them with the 53rd pick, which is literally like one of the last picks in the draft. And I think the Celtics being contenders and ready to compete and not really rebuild, I think swinging for the fences is not something bad that they did in this draft. And JD Davidson at 53, given who was left at the board on that time, has some upside. I kind of like the pick for them. I don't really know where JD Davidson would go and should go in this draft, but I mean, the Boston Celtics, I can't complain. He could develop under the radar over there. I mean, from what you saw in high school, what do you think of him as a player?
I mean, very explosive, could shoot the ball. I don't remember what his shooting numbers were at Alabama for this year, but I remember in high school he could shoot the ball. As I said, very explosive. I don't want to say early Russell Westbrook, but I mean, I think that is, and I don't want to say that's his ceiling, but that's what he showed flashes of in high school. And early Russell Westbrook, as I said, probably not the greatest jump shot, and probably not the greatest 3-point shooter, but I would say he's a slasher, a slashing type point guard.
I'm with.
All right, we'll move on to Charlotte. The Hornets drafted Mark Williams out of Duke, 15th overall, and well, I don't want to say they drafted, but they picked up shooting guard Bryce McGowens from Nebraska as the 40th overall pick in a trade from Minnesota. And in return, well, that was their return. They actually drafted Josh, is it Minot? I can't remember. Or Minot.
Either way, I don't think.
Okay. I'm gonna say Minot because that's how it would sound. Josh Minot from Memphis with the 45th overall pick, but as I said, he was traded for Bryce McGowens. And then Charlotte also, they picked up in a trade with the New York Knicks Jalen Duren from Memphis, but he was traded to Detroit in a 3-team trade that had Charlotte getting, I think, like 4 second-round picks and a first-round pick. The Knicks got a second-round pick, and then the Pistons got Jalen Duren and Kemba Walker from the Knicks. What's your take on those?
For the Hornets, everyone knew that they were going to take a center. Everyone knew that they wanted Mark Williams, and they were going to take Mark Williams. That's the pick. And I knew that both Duren and Williams were going to fall. Just in today's day and age, traditional centers in that way aren't valued, so people don't pick high, especially in the lottery. And I had a feeling that Jalen Duren was going to slam at 13. And at 13, I have a here that AJ Griffin was available at 13, but they didn't take him. They took Jalen Duren and traded him for future draft capital. And I think that that's a decision that the Hornets front office made, which I'm not opposed of, because future draft capital can help you either pick up more talent down the line or help you trade to get like an all-star caliber player in the future. We don't know how those picks are going to turn out, if they're going to be good, if they're going to be bad. And I think the Hornets are in the position to take a gamble on that. But if they were to take the pick, I would have liked to see them take AJ Griffin at a Duke, just because I think surrounding LaMelo with 3-and-D type of guys, pretty good potential that fit their timeline and can be kind of the surrounding pieces around your superstar LaMelo, I think isn't a bad idea. And I think you could have saved Jalen Duren or Mark Williams, whichever way you wanted to go. They ended up going Mark Williams because you knew he was going to fall to 15, because the Cavs weren't going to take another big man at 14. So that's why I kind of wanted to see AJ Griffin, just to save the Mark Williams or Jalen Duren pick. So you walk out with 2 guys with a lot of upside and a lot of potential, all-star potential, and all 3 or all 2, whoever you decided to get. But then Hornets front office probably know better than I do with what they want to do in the future. And you have to think that whoever they took, if it was Griffin or if it was Duren and they took Mark Williams, that they're not going to end up being your franchise player, because you already have that. And at this point, you're just finding the surrounding pieces that fit around him. And Mark Williams is exactly that for LaMelo. I mean, even in high school, you've seen that LaMelo thrives in a big that can set screens, that can catch lobs, and that plays defense, because he'll let everyone go to the rim and not play defense. Just let Onyeka Okongwu clean up the mess in high school. So I think Mark Williams can definitely do that for him. And Bryce McGowens, I like Bryce McGowens a lot. I think he's a microwave type of scorer. I think he's in the Jaylen Brown, Zach LaVine, that type of shooting guard mold. And I think picking him up, even if it was from a trade this low in the draft at 40, isn't bad. I think there might be a little redundancy given that James Bouknight is there. But again, interesting move by the Hornets, but I can't say that they had a bad draft. What do you think on Mark Williams and the Hornets draft overall?
Mark Williams, as you said, the Cavs at 14 probably weren't going to take a big because they already have Isaiah, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen, so they weren't going to take a center. So Mark Williams at 15 after they traded Jalen Duren isn't the worst option. As you said, he fits everything Melo wants to be in the point as a point guard, set screens, catch lobs. I'm curious to see what that possibly means for Kai Jones, because he was drafted there last year, and I think he played in the G League for most of the season, if not all of it. And so I'm interested to see who gets the starting center spot, because I think they were drafted around the same pick. And then also they're also vying for Miles Turner. So that's going to be an interesting situation to look at as the offseason picks up and going into possibly the regular season. And I honestly don't know much about Bryce McGowan, so I let you take the lead on that. But if he's got a Jaylen Brown, Zach LaVine mold, I mean, I feel like he might turn into something. Obviously, there are a few players that have turned into diamond in the rough picks, that have turned into diamonds in the rough as they progressed in the league over time. But I'm interested to see what the Charlotte Hornets do going into the offseason and regular season. Obviously, they still have to figure out the Miles Bridges situation. Getting Gordon Hayward off the books is a major thing too. But oh my, I hate that. Getting Gordon Hayward off the books is a major thing too, but this season is very important for Charlotte, and I think they did a good job drafting overall. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls, they took oh my God, Dalen Terry from Arizona with the 18th overall pick, and picked up Justin Lewis as an undrafted two-way player. From what I've seen with Dalen Terry, I said he's a little bit of an Andre Iguodala mold, because he's a great defender, is great in the passing lanes, great on the ball, great with on ball defense, but his shooting ability lacks a lot. And obviously in the NBA nowadays, you have to be able to shoot, or else teams are going to leave you wide open and dare you to shoot. We see it with Ben Simmons. We see it with Matisse Thybulle. I mean, he's going to have to improve on his jump shot in order to be an effective, I mean, I guess you can say two-way player, but just an effective player in the league. What's your thoughts on this as well?
I think Chicago going into the draft and going into offseason, I think one thing they need to address is wing depth. Because I think they have a lot of guards and a lot of good guards that can switch in the one and the two, maybe slot in the three if you want to go super small. But wings are something that I think that they're lacking. Wings and bigs, specifically, is what I needed to address. But Dalen Terry, I think, is like a big guard, like a guard in a wing forward's body. He's 6'7" with guard like skills and a lot of potential to grow to something more than that. And I can't hate on the pick for the Bulls. Just I think Chicago's gonna love his personality and everything that he has to bring to Chicago, just like the culture. I think Chicago is gonna love this guy, whether they think that he fits the team need or not. And I think they kind of address the need with Justin Lewis out of Marquette, a 6'8" forward that can do a little bit of everything. And again, if you're going to take a undrafted or a two-way guy, it doesn't hurt to get a guy like Justin Lewis. With especially with Chicago being down so many guys this season, if it's injuries or what have you, I think even a guy undrafted two-way Justin Lewis is honestly smart in my opinion.
All right. We'll move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who drafted Ochai Agbaji from Kansas with the 14th overall pick. They drafted center Khalifa Diop. I'm assuming it's Diop or Diop from Gran Canaria in Spain with the 39th overall pick. They took Isaiah Mobley from USC with the 49th overall pick, and guard Luke Travers from the new, what is it? The MB, I can't remember what the NBL stands for. Um, but they took him from Perth with the 56th overall pick. My thoughts on the Cavs draft. I mean, Ochai Agbaji, as we said with the Charlotte Hornets, they weren't going to take a center, so they took, in my opinion, the best available. I mean, whether you think AJ Griffin, I don't think AJ Griffin is better than Ochai Agbaji, but I mean, he proved that he was a winner at Kansas, obviously this season, winning a national championship, and was arguably the main guy, the go-to guy for Kansas. He spent, I think, all 4 years there. And he's a great defender, in my opinion. He can, shooting does need to improve a bit, but he can shoot the ball at a efficient rate. And I honestly don't know about Khalifa Diop. I didn't really pay attention to Liga ACB, and I didn't watch highlights because I was busy with a lot of other stuff. But I do know the next pick who they took, which was Isaiah Mobley from USC, obviously the brother of Evan Mobley. So it doesn't surprise me that they took Isaiah, as he was supposed to, as he, I think, was in the draft last year, but then backed out at the last moment. And I think him and his brother, obviously they played at USC together. They played in high school together. So the connection between and the chemistry between both of them is there. And then I personally don't know a lot about Luke Travers, but I mean, if you want to give your takes on what the Cavs did in the draft this year, go ahead.
I think the Cavs, I'm like trying to make sense of all the picks that they made. And Ochai Agbaji, I think the Cavs needed wings who can shoot, because I think that shooting is something like they could have knocked down a shot when they played the Nets in the in. I feel like that's something that they struggled with a lot this year. I think maybe a ball handler could have helped their case in terms of what I think that they should do in the offseason. But from what I hear, they're open to re-signing Colin Sexton, which is a ball handler like that. But now you give him, if you bring him back, and Darius Garland, a sure thing shooter. And I think even though I'm pretty high on AJ Griffin and he was on the board at this time, I don't think the Cavs want to have any more guys to develop. I think they want to take a veteran guy who can play immediately, and Ochai is that guy. And in my mock draft, I had the Cavs taking Agbaji at 14, and this is what they did. So I do like the pick for them in this case, especially with the success of like Chris Duarte. Throwing my guy Corey Kispert there. Not that he had a super tremendous rookie season, but the fact that he got minutes early in his career as a rookie, being a veteran guy in college. And I think that Agbaji is going to be another one of those guys too. Khalifa Diop, if I'm saying that right, I don't know how to say his last name. I watched a little bit of his highlights going into this. I think he can develop into a decent center in this league. I don't project him to be a starter or anything, but I think he's solid. I think he's athletic. He runs, and I think playing in the Spanish league can help his case. Just being around high IQ guys in Spain on the offensive and the defensive side. So I don't see that as a bad pick for the Cavs. And I don't think that getting backup bigs like that was an extreme need for them, but I think it's something that they should have considered. And I think they did that. And they did that with both Diop and Isaiah Mobley. And I love Isaiah Mobley being back with Evan Mobley. I mean, watch them in high school or at USC. They can be a pretty lethal duo if they both figure it out in the NBA. Evan Mobley has been seeming to figure it out. And if Isaiah figures that out too, and they play together, excited to watch them play it. And Luke Travers, I don't know a whole lot about him. I know that people can keep saying that he could be like a super sleeper in this draft out of the NBL. Um, Playing in their like I forget what it's called, like Rising Stars program that they got in the NBL. I think yeah, I think he was a part of that too. But in mode that I think he is like a super project.
All right. So moving on to Dallas, they drafted guard slash forward Wendell Moore Jr. from Duke with the 26th overall pick, but he was traded to Minnesota after Houston drafted him. The Houston drafted him because of the Christian Wood trade that sent Trey Burke, Bojan Marjanovic, Sterling Brown, and I can't remember the other player, to Houston for Christian Wood. Christian Wood obviously went to Dallas. And then I forgot to write on here, the Mavericks also drafted Jaden Hardy in a trade from the Kings with the 36th pick, if I'm not mistaken. What's your opinions on what the Mavs did, obviously making the Western Conference Finals this year?
It's kind of interesting. I still don't fully understand uh the Dallas Mavericks and what their plan is. Um, like after they traded KP, I mean, it looked like Luka was by himself and didn't even like have a big, or it was just a bunch of role players, none of which I would consider tier one role players. Uh, but they still made it to the conference finals. I think the Mavs are almost like a blueprint for the modern NBA. And that's a nice luxury to have when you have Luka Doncic. Drafting Wendell Moore, he ended up, so Wendell Moore is in Minnesota, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I saw this pick, um, one more someone I was high on, and I think that people slept on him as a first round pick. He does a little bit of everything on the floor. Again, another one of those guys that are just good at basketball, both sides of the floor too. So I was really, the thought of him in Dallas, really liked, just giving Luka. Again, a role player who I think can develop into a tier one role player, if that makes sense. But trading him to Minnesota, I mean, I understand it. You had to do what you had to do to get Christian Wood, which I think is a smart move by Dallas. But we could talk about that later. And trading for Jaden Hardy. Me and George had a conversation about this earlier before we started recording, but I like it for Dallas. I like Jaden Hardy as a prospect. I think he's a big time scorer, and I feel like a good amount of the times when you're highly ranked in high school and maybe you don't have a super stellar season, if it's you go to the NBL or the G League or college, if you have a stinker freshman year, or whatever, but you still end up becoming pretty good in the NBA. I think Jaden Hardy could be one of those guys. Big time scorer, a guy who can get a bucket, has some playmaking potential. And I think if he develops into that, and I think Dallas is not the maybe most ideal situation, but he can develop without the high expectation of being that guy. Because you have Luka, but if he develops into something even close to that, is going to have a pretty good backcourt mate in Jaden Hardy.
Yeah, I agree. I was honestly shocked. I mean, not shocked in the way that obviously Dallas had to trade the pick. So they were able to draft it, or it was Dallas's pick, obviously from the Christian Wood trade, but Houston drafted him. And I'm kind of shocked that Houston didn't keep him because I feel, as you said, he can do a little bit of everything. He's great defensively. He can shoot the ball from three, which is what the league is transitioning to. And he's got a little bit of a mid-range game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a mid-range game, which is a lost art in today's league. And I felt like Houston probably could have and should have kept him, considering Kenyon Martin Jr. Asked for a trade recently, which is very shocking to me. But moving on, they traded him to Minnesota, which I think is a great fit. Minnesota obviously had a great season this year. They probably should have beat Memphis in the first round, but that's moving on to a latter date. That's moving on to something else. And as for Jaden Hardy, as Carlos said, he's a bucket getter. Maybe didn't have the best year at the G League Ignite program, but he can go get a bucket. And I think that's something maybe not what Dallas needs per se, because Luka has the ball in his hands a lot. But I mean, he could add to the bench production that they might need this season. Moving on to the Denver Nuggets, they drafted Christian. Now I'm gonna ask you, how do you pronounce this? Because I heard everyone on the ESPN broadcast say Brown, and then I thought it was Braun. So
I've heard it both ways. I've heard Braun in Kansas, watching him at Kansas this year. I've heard Brown at Kansas this year. I've heard Brown at the NBA combine at the draft. I honestly couldn't tell you, but as long as we're on the same page talking about the same guy, I think we're fine.
All right, well, I'm gonna go Christian Braun. That's how I've heard it pronounced, like for the majority of my time that I've watched him. With the 21st overall pick from Kansas, they drafted Peyton Watson from UCLA with the 30th overall pick. He was traded from OKC, and they drafted Ismail Kamagate from Paris with the 46th overall pick. Now, he was traded from Detroit, and they picked up Colin Gillespie from Villanova as an undrafted two-way player. And I think that it's an interesting pickup considering of all the guards they have over there. But I mean, it'll be interesting to how they make it work. But moving on, Christian Braun, solid guard at Kansas, was the shooting guard. Was he shooting guard, or he might have been small forward actually, because I think Okai was shooting guard. But can shoot the ball, plays great defense, something that the Nuggets really, I don't want to say need, but they do, and need might not be the right word, but he's a great fit for that team. And Peyton Watson, I mean, he was a freshman this year, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Peyton Watson, UCLA, they didn't have the season I expected them to have, but being a freshman playing behind all of those guys that were seniors and juniors, he didn't get a lot of shine, but from what I saw of him, he's able to at least play some solid defense. I want to say he's a decent rebounder at the small forward position. But yeah, I think he's going to develop into at least a solid role player, in my opinion. I don't know anything about Ismail Kamagate, so I'm gonna leave that up there. But Colin Gillespie, as I said, I've watched him since his freshman year at Villanova. Solid point guard, great leader, can score, can slash, can shoot the ball. I thought maybe he would go late second round, to be honest, but getting him as an undrafted two-way player isn't the worst option. Yeah, so Colin Gillespie, the guard situation in Denver is honestly like one of those things where they have a lot of guards, so I don't know where he'll exactly fit in. But I mean, he's a 4-year player, spent all of his years at Villanova, so I mean, he'll find a way to make the team or spend a lot of time in the G League and then work his way up from there. But what's your thoughts on what the Denver Nuggets did in the draft this year?
To say the least, I'm not a fan. Going into it, the Nuggets, I was like, don't go guard at all. I don't want to see a guard picked at all. Dude, they're gonna have Jamal Murray come back, Monte Morris, Falco Campazzo, Austin Rivers, Bones Highland, Marcus Howard. that is a lot of guards that I think that they played this year. I'm pretty sure they ran Austin Rivers at power forward. Like that's how much I was like, don't go guard. And Christian Brown is a guard in the same way that all those guys are pretty much more or less point guards. Um, that's why I wasn't really a fan of the pick, but I'm a fan of Christian Brown and what he can bring to a contender. Um, Shoots the ball really well, puts in a lot of effort on the defensive side, is a ball mover. I'm a fan of Christian Brown for the Nuggets. Again, I don't think it was the most ideal pick for them at 21, maybe at 30. Yes. So I can't really complain too much there. Peyton Watson, I can't complain of though, because although I like the upside that he has and what he could be, I don't think the Nuggets are in the position to develop anyone right now. You have the back-to-back MVP. You're gonna have Michael Porter Jr. coming back. You're gonna have Jamal Murray coming back. That automatically, when those guys are healthy and everyone's healthy, we've already seen it that they're a very good playoff team. And I think that again, addressing your wing depth and everything is something that I wanted to see them take more experienced guys, not so much of a project like Peyton Watson. Ismail Kamagate in the second round at 46 in a trade. I can't even say anything about that. I don't really have an opinion on that. Cool that the Nuggets got a big, and if he develops, I feel like he's gonna end up being a backup big for Nikola Jokic for a long time. Either way, and Gillespie, it just felt like they got so many guards. I do like Colin Gillespie. I think he is a winner and he knows how to win. Um, and you can't really say anything about having those guys on your team, even if there's a super log jam at the point guard. Like here I go going back and forth that I don't like it, but I like. Let me say this: I like the guys that they picked individually. I like Christian Brown as a prospect. I like what Peyton Watson could bring. I like what Ismail Kamagate could be, and I like Colin Gillespie for now. But do I think that the Nuggets, that they're ideal for the Nuggets in team fits? Not really.
I agree. I would say I feel what you're talking about there. I mean, as you said, Peyton Watson is sort of a project, and they are not in the ideal situation to be focusing on projects with the roster they have. I mean, they got beat by the Warriors this year without Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, but as soon as those guys come back, they are a top three Western, well, maybe not top three, but top four Western Conference team and a contender to make the finals. So I mean, trying to develop projects isn't in the current time frame, but I mean, we'll see what they do. Moving on to Detroit, they drafted guard Jaden Ivey from Purdue with the fifth overall pick, and they picked up Jalen Duren in a trade from Charlotte with the 13th overall pick out of Memphis. And as we mentioned with the Denver Nuggets, Ismail Kamagate was drafted by Detroit, but then traded to Denver in the second round. My thoughts on Detroit taking Jaden Ivey. I think that was they went with the best available player rather than fit, because obviously Sacramento took Keegan Murray, and Jaden Ivey said that he didn't want to play in Sacramento, which I don't blame him. Sorry, Sacramento fans. Um, Jaden, yeah, in my opinion, I feel like him and Cade in the backcourt is going to be good. Now, obviously, he was a point guard at Purdue, but I feel like maybe maybe he plays the two. I mean, Cade can play the two too. I mean, they're both great ball handlers, and in a league where you're seeing a lot of, maybe you're seeing either tall guards play as the one and the two, or you're seeing tall wings play as twos and threes. I mean, like, I don't think the fit of Jaden Ivey next to Cade Cunningham isn't the necessarily the worst option, but I mean, at that point, I don't know what happens with Killian Hayes. I know you were kind of still hoping to get that he would somewhat develop and improve, but I don't think that's going to happen in my opinion. And I'd like to see what a backcourt of Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham does in the regular season.
I think that the Pistons I love the Pistons draft and what they walked out with. I think Jaden Ivey falling to 5 is the perfect situation that they could have been in. And the fact that the Kings were before you kind of increased the chances that they would fall because they're the Kings and they don't draft well at all. So you got the guy that you wanted originally. Um, and I watched a good amount of Jaden Ivey this year, and I think that he can play the two as much as he is a point guard. I feel like he's a point guard in the sense that he needs the ball in his hands more than he doesn't to be good, to be the big time scorer, electric player that he is. And I think the versatility of Cade allows you to let Ivey be who Jaden Ivey is. And I'm excited to see that backcourt in the future. So I love that pick for them. Picking up Jalen Duren, I think, is also something that I love for them. I think Jalen Duren is a Detroit basketball type of guy. He brings the toughness and on both ends of the floor. It kind of makes me wonder about Isaiah Stewart now. I know Isaiah Stewart, a lot of people don't really see as a starting center in the league or anything, but let's hope Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart don't fight because they both got that dog in them. But it's interesting because you hear a lot of rumors talking about DeAndre Ayton. I'm getting into offseason, but I think this relates to the NBA draft. Going of the Pistons targeting DeAndre Ayton, and it's pretty interesting that they made the trade for Jalen Duren, even though it seems that they're very high on getting DeAndre Ayton. Maybe they use that in a trade piece, that Jalen Duren is used in a trade piece if they do try to go after Ayton, or maybe they stick with Duren and let Ayton go, do whatever he does. I think either way, it's not a bad idea because they're going to get a center pretty much in the same mold with good potential on both sides. If it's Jalen Duren's potential or DA's potential, I like the Detroit Pistons draft. I think it puts them at a good position for their future. And I think we can go on to the defending champs, the Golden State Warriors. They with the 28th pick, they took forward Patrick Baldwin Jr., who was a very highly ranked recruit in high school. Had a 12 point per game season at a very not good Milwaukee team. They also got Ryan Rollins in a trade from Atlanta that we were talking about earlier in the second round. And they signed Lester Quinones out of Memphis on the two-way contract. Given that they are the defending champs and how you think their offseason is going to go, that we touched on a little bit earlier about free agencies and everything, what do you think on the Warriors draft night?
Now, Patrick Baldwin Jr., I'm not surprised that the Warriors picked him up. I said if they don't get like a Andrew Nembhard, like a guard, then I think they're going to take Patrick Baldwin Jr. because he can shoot the ball. I mean, we've seen it in high school. He did have a lot of what's the word? Obstacles, for lack of a better word. During his time in Milwaukee, I think he had like an ankle injury that was keeping him out of games. He had obviously the pandemic and protocols and stuff like that kept him out of games. So I think that he can, and being that he's going to be under the leadership of Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, I do think that he can find his shooting stride again. Because, I mean, if you looked at his highlights in college, or not college, in high school, he can shoot the ball. He's, what is he, like 6'9", 6'10", something like that. 6'9", 6'10" in high school and could shoot lights out. As I said, he had a lot of obstacles during his one season in Milwaukee. But if he finds his stride in the league under the leadership of Curry and the vets in Golden State, I think he can be a solid role player piece for the future for them. And I mean, We talked about Ryan Rollins earlier, so I won't get into that. And Lester Quinones out of Memphis, undrafted two-way player. I think he's going to have I'm not going to say a similar like type of mold from like towards like Jordan Poole, how he became an sort of a most improved player this year. But in the games he played in Memphis, which was a crazy season for that program, I think that he's going to find his way in the G League and kind of work his way up from there. What's your thoughts on what the defending champs did this year in the draft?
I think I had them taking Andrew Nembhard here, a bit of a homer pick, but I do think the Warriors could address the backup point guard and in one who is very good with the ball in their hands, given you have the best shooters on the planet on your team. But Patrick Baldwin Jr., honestly, I probably think that this might be the best situation for him that he can. There's not really a lot of high expectations on him. You're with the defending champs. You can kind of develop under the radar, and him being an elite shooter or having elite shooter potential, you literally have the two greatest of all time on your team, and good vets too. And I think that this is a really good spot for him, even if he doesn't pan out. And I think the Warriors are smart to kind of take a gamble on it, because if he does turn out to be an elite shooter and a playable guy, then that's a W. But if not, it's not you don't take it with with a lot of expectations from him, given that you already drafted Jonathan Kuminga and he already looks like that he's going to be a star one day, that you took last year. Moses Moody has potential to be that too. So I don't think that that's a bad pick. In my opinion, we talked about Ryan Rollins. I think that you can never put up too many shots on that team. If one person puts up like 30 shots a game, I think that's not a bad thing under a Steve Kerr system. Lester Quinones, it's funny that you said Jordan Poole, because I was thinking the exact same thing, that they're kind of somewhat, I don't know how to explain it, but I know me and you, like, we're understanding each other, that career trajectory type at Lester Quinones' point in his career, Jordan Poole was kind of in that same route, even though he was a draft pick and everything, but kind of in that same mold. And I don't think I think the Warriors know what they're doing. I mean, we literally talked about it earlier. It's homegrown, everyone that they have in the dynasty that is the Golden State Warriors. So, I mean, even if we question the Patrick Baldwin pick or whatever, I think we should all be able to trust that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, did you see? I don't know if you saw the tweet, but it was Patrick Baldwin Jr. I can't remember the year. I don't know if he tweeted it when he got drafted or like while he was in Milwaukee, but the tweet he posted was exactly similar to when Curry got drafted in 09. I can't find. Let me see if I can find the tweet. It was like something, and I can't paraphrase it, but let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Oh man, I'm mad that I can't remember this. I'm mad that I can't remember it, because it was exactly similar to. Okay, yeah, I found it. Here we go. It says, "I love everyone in this locker room. We are going to figure this out." And Steph Curry, when he got drafted in 2009, said, "Promise to all the Warrior fans, we will figure this thing out. If it's the last thing we do, we will figure it out." Like, eerily similar to when Curry got drafted. So I feel like that is something already that him and Curry, when they first meet, are going to kind of have a laugh over, is the fact that their tweets when they got drafted are eerily similar. And I feel like that's going to be an interesting situation moving into next season. But
for sure,
moving on to the Rockets, they drafted Jabari Smith Jr. a forward from Auburn with the 3rd overall pick, and they drafted Tari Eason from LSU forward with the 17th overall pick, and they picked up Ty Washington, a guard from Kentucky, with the 29th overall pick as he was traded from Memphis. Jabari Smith Jr. Now, in what I saw in mock drafts, I mean, I looked at Kevin O'Connor's. Oh my gosh. I looked at Kevin O'Connor's draft guide, and he said he had shades of Michael Porter Jr. and a two-way Rashard Lewis, which I think that is honestly what his ceiling can be. From his highlights, he's a great shooter from the 3. And I think he can put the ball a little bit on the floor, but he doesn't have the handle like a MPJ. And I mean, I know some people were saying like KD, he can shoot like KD because he has the size, but he doesn't have the handles like KD does. So I feel like that's something he's going to need to work on. But it's not the worst thing if you do plan on playing him at the 4, because I mean, you could have a pick and pop with him and Jalen Green or him and KPJ. And Tari Eason out of LSU, I think he's just a workhorse and a defensive. I'd say he's good defensively. I think that he's going to help the Rockets. He's going to be a focal point of the Rockets not being one of the worst defensive teams in the league as the years progress and over time. And them drafting or trading for Ty Washington, I think that just is a pick that possibly feels a necessity for them, because I don't think they are sold on the KPJ at point guard thing. Not saying that not saying that Ty will be a starter, but I think he'll be a solid backup. And I mean, we'll just see what happens from there, because I think he can play make and he can shoot the ball good efficiently. What's your thoughts on the Houston Rockets draft?
Jabari Smith was like people said that he's the biggest loser of the draft, just with everyone thinking he was number 1. And in the back of my head, I always kind of wanted him to fall to Houston just because I like the fit of Paolo in Orlando. We all knew Chet and the good, how that's like a match made in heaven for OKC. And Jabari falling here, I don't think is the worst thing for either of them. I think the offensive firepower that the Houston Rockets can potentially have is incredible. And on the defensive end, I don't think Jabari Smith is a minus defender. So I think it fits both timeline and I guess positional need here. And with a 3rd pick, I think Jabari Smith can be someone that's going to be really good for a really long time. So I like that pick. The Rockets didn't really have the luxury to take. They just took whoever fell to them at 3, and Jabari Smith. I mean, people regarded him as the number 1 pick for a reason, so you can't even complain that he fell to you at 3. Tari Eason is someone I think is going to be good too. I think the league is trending in a direction where Tari Eason is going to be, or he fits the mold that everyone wants. And I think he has like the dog in him to make sure he is good, like that he wants to be good and he will be good in this league. And I think he's a more intangible, makes winning plays than puts up 30 a night for you, which again, every team needs. And Ty Washington, I think I had Ty Washington going like 17 that Tari Eason went. I think that I was pretty high on him in the sense of all the true point guards in the draft, and I considered him as one of them. And I think that the Houston Rockets need a true point guard on the roster, or a true point guard like going forward. Again, just because the KPJ situation isn't really panning out the way they probably thought it would. And the fact that he fell at 29, even though it was a trade, I think you walk away happy with that too. I mean, he might not look like a true point guard just off the eye test and the role that he played at Kentucky this year, just because he was playing behind veteran guards already. But he broke John Wall's assist record, and it's pretty ironic that John Wall is on the roster for the Rockets. So overall, I think the Houston Rockets had a pretty solid draft. And moving on to the Indiana Pacers, who I like how they did their draft night. But at 6, they took Benedict Mathurin, guard out of Arizona. At 31, they took Gonzaga's point guard Andrew Nembhard. And at 48, in a trade from Minnesota, they took Kendall Brown out of Baylor. They also took Hugo Besson with the last pick in the draft and traded him to Milwaukee. Before I start saying anything, or before I turn it over to you, George, I just want to say that I like the Indiana Pacers draft.
I do too. I think Benedict Mathurin, I think he's a great, how should I say it? I don't want to say it. He can coexist with Tyrese Halliburton. The length there is going to be unreal. They're both, Benedict Mathurin, I want to say, is like 6'7", and Tyrese is 6'6". So I mean, you have tall guards who can both defend and both can shoot the ball at a great rate. Benedict Mathurin is also a great slasher. He's a better slasher than Tyrese Halliburton. And I mean, when he goes to the rim, he goes up with like force. Nothing is going to stop him. If you're in his way, he will probably dunk on you. And Andrew Nembhard, obviously that's your guy. I think he's going to be a great backup. He's a great backup point guard for the Indiana Pacers, because I think they're going to move on from, or find at least a trade piece for TJ McConnell to put him in at least a playoff team or a contending team. And so I think he's going to be a great backup behind Tyrese Halliburton. And I mean, he fits the timeline with what the Indiana Pacers are doing with 4-year players in a sense. Tyrese was a 4-year player at Iowa State. So, and then I don't know much about Kendall Brown. So I'll lead it back to you. You can continue.
Yeah, I really I've been high on Ben Mathurin the entire season, and people had him as low as 9, I think, to the Spurs. And I think in my final mock draft, I had him 5, right above Keegan Murray. I had the Kings taking Ivy, and then I had Mathurin right under him. And I think he can turn out to be someone that's really good. I see a Jaylen Brown in him. And I think that if all the things go right in Indiana, he's not going to be too far from what Jaylen Brown is now early on in his career. And I really like him in Indiana as a potential star with the Pacers. 31, I think he's by far my favorite player I've watched play at Gonzaga. Even though he might not have had all the accolades and a lot of success, he's so fun to watch. And if you have the chance to watch him. He's cerebral. As a point guard, he could do it all. And I think in Indiana, I don't think Brogdon is a long-term piece for them anymore. Obviously, TJ McConnell. And if his ceiling is back up to being a backup to Tyrese Halliburton, I still think he's going to be good in whatever role that he's in. I think he's too good to fail. I think he's bred to be an NBA point guard. If you look at his resume, he's played at high level programs at every stop he went to in his basketball journey. So I don't think that Andrew Nembhard is going to fail in the league. Kendall Brown, I think, is an upside pick and fits a bit of a positional need for the Pacers, and I like it at 48. Him dropping that low, I think he was going to be a late first, early second type of guy, but him falling closer to the back half of the draft is a steal for the Pacers.
All right. Go ahead.
Moving on with the 43rd pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers select Musa Diabate out of Michigan. George, thoughts?
I mean, we're trying to find solid role players or pieces that can fit, whether it be short term or long term down the line. And I think Musa Diabate, while he doesn't put up the flashiest numbers or he flashiest numbers or he doesn't have like the highlight plays, he just works hard. He's great at getting putbacks and getting rebounds and having a knack for the glass. Uh, I think he is more of a fit piece rather than we're just drafting the like I don't want to say best available, but drafting who the best player per se, like we kind of did with Brandon Boston Jr. last year, where he fell after having a bad season at Kentucky. I just feel like Musa Diabate is just a fit piece that probably will with the right development will be good long in the long term. And he's from France, so if we bring Nicholas Batum back, I think he's going to get him sort of right in a way.
Yeah, and I don't really know where the Clippers were going to go with this pick. I didn't even know. Well, I kind of questioned if Musa Diabate was even going to be picked in the draft at all. I mean, I could have seen him going in the late 30s or being undrafted. That's not to say that to knock on Musa Diabate at all. I didn't really know where he would fit and how teams would see him. I think it feels like a Swiss Army ish type of four that plays bigger than what he is. He's kind of wiry at 6'10", but I think he plays like a modern day five, if that makes sense. Positional need for sure for the Clippers. I don't know, man. I want to see if he gets minutes early in his career, just because although it is a team fit need right now, he's playing behind a good amount of guys. Marcus Morris is still on the books. Nick Batum is expected to re-sign. We already re-signed Robert Covington. So I mean, we'll see if he gets minutes early. And then the Clippers also agreed to a contract with Mike DeVoe out of Georgia Tech. I think on is either Woj or Shams that I read this on that they agreed on a deal that he can compete for a two-way spot. I don't really know if that's a guarantee or not, but either way, the Clippers are in talks with Mike DeVoe. Are you familiar with Mike DeVoe at all?
Nah.
Mike DeVoe, I feel like is reminds me a little bit of D'Angelo Russell, a bigger guard, lefty, out of Georgia Tech. Had a pretty solid career at Georgia Tech. I think he was a 4-year guy, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know. I even if he becomes a two-way guy for the Clippers, I don't really see him being someone that cracks a rotation anytime soon. But if he turns out to be a pretty decent scorer, a little bit of a playmaker and a bigger guard, I mean the league is moving in that direction. And he was undrafted. It might not even sign with the Clippers. So I don't know. We'll see. Moving on to the crosstown rivals, the Lakers, who traded into this draft at 35 in a trade with Orlando, took guard Max Christie out of Michigan State. They also hit the undrafted market a little bit, signed Scottie Pippen Jr. In their two-way slot, as well as Cole Swider out of Syracuse. And big news, just fan favorite around here. They also have a deal where Sharif O'Neal is going to play with the Lakers for the summer league.
My thoughts on the Lakers draft. I mean, they have to figure the draft really isn't important to them. They're supposed to be contending with the roster that they have. So I mean, them taking Max Christie at the 35th overall pick is more of it's a need because they weren't the greatest 3-point shooting team, and Max Christie is a decent to good 3-point shooter that could at least come in and possibly help them out. He might not be the best defender, but I think you need pieces around LeBron that their main job is to shoot and play defense. So I mean, the fit is there. As for the undrafted guys, I think they're going to. I'm not going to say I have high hopes because it's the Lakers, and literally, I don't think they're going to be on like the actual team come the season. I think they're just going to be in the G League. And but I'm happy for Sharif O'Neal to finally get a chance to possibly play in the summer league, or maybe work his way through the G League and possibly get a spot with the Lakers.
Yeah, big ups to Sharif O'Neal. I mean, both me and George um, are really excited to see him play and get a shot at being pro. Watched them all in high school. Me and George used to watch his highlights during like lunch or whatever in high school. So it's cool to see him getting a chance in the NBA. In for their draft pick at 35, it just felt weird that the Lakers, to me, that they traded into the draft when I feel like the draft isn't really something that they needed to kind of go into, if that makes sense. And even when they did, you trade for the 35th overall pick, which was like, I would expect the Lakers, if they were to try to draft future and post LeBron type thing, because you don't really know if you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 more years from LeBron. It was like the 35th pick kind of felt weird. And on top of that, no knock on Max Christie, but like Max Christie was the pick. Like for the Lakers, it kind of seemed like, yeah, we want that guy, so we're going to trade it into that pick. Um, I don't know. I didn't know where Max Christie was going to fall to in this draft, if he was going to be a late first or even like a late second. He was kind of all over the place in mocks and big boards and stuff like that. Yeah, not really opposed to the Lakers with his fit with the Lakers, given the position of need that George was talking about earlier. But the bright lights of LA, it's really hard for young players to be good in that. And I think everyone that knows basketball and follows anything on social media about the NBA, that that. So yeah, not gonna say I don't like it, not gonna say that I do like it. It's just maybe a little confusing for me, just trying to understand what the Lakers did on draft night. But moving on to the Memphis Grizzlies, who made a lot of noise this draft. They made a good amount of trades for everything that they walked out with. But let me just say, they walked out with Jake LaRavia, kind of like a stretch four out of Wake Forest. They walked out with David Roddy out of Colorado State, big fire hydrant build guy that can shoot the ball and score. They took Kennedy Chandler out of Tennessee, and they also signed another two-way guy, consensus fan favorite Kenneth Lofton Jr. out of Louisiana Tech. They had Walker Kessler out of Auburn, big center, good shot blocker, traded him. Also drafted Ty Washington that we talked about earlier, traded him to Houston. And the trade to get David Roddy, the Memphis Grizzlies gave up DeAnthony Melton for Danny Green and the 23rd pick, which became David Roddy. Just in terms of what they walked out with, how do you feel about it, George?
I think they walked out with some good pieces. I think Jake LaRavia fits somewhat of a need, considering that they are going to need to pay Kyle Anderson, which I don't think they're going to do. But with the DeAnthony Melton trade, it more than likely seems that they're either re-signing Tyus Jones or Kennedy Chandler is going to take up the backup point guard role, but I'm interested to see what that means, what they're going to do with that. And I don't know where David Roddy fits into this whole thing because they do have Brandon Clark. And they just have a lot of forwards, like a lot of 4s and 5s. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of those guys. And as for the D'Anthony Melton trade, I'm not shocked because it was either they're either gonna keep Melton and just let Tyus Jones walk, or not Tyus Jones, almost said Trey. Tyus Jones walk, which I don't think they're gonna do, considering that Tyus Jones' assist to turnover ratio is out of this world last season, or they were going to they were going to keep Tyus Jones and trade D'Anthony Melton, which was what they went with. So in my opinion, I think the haul that they got is really good. Interesting to see what happens as they made it to the second round this past season in I don't want to say it shocked a lot of people that they were that good, that they were this good, but it's interesting what's going to happen with them heading into the off season and next season, because they do have a lot of questions that they need to fulfill.
Yeah, Jake LaRavia, going back to it, is a guy that I thought that a contender is going to take. Super versatile forward, shoots the ball really well, just a high IQ type of guy. And I like it for the Grizzlies. I think, Kyle Anderson is not going to be good forever. I don't know. I think he's a free agent this year.
Yep.
Kyle Anderson and that type of guy, and the lengthy fours that's like you need versatility in today's league, and I think Jake LaRavia can bring that with a decent amount of upside. And David Roddy, I feel like they got pretty good value out of D'Anthony Melton. Just the fact that they were able to get a first round pick out of D'Anthony Melton, who has been a bench guy, and I'm pretty sure either a second round pick or undrafted type of guy that they were able to bring in and develop into a rotational guy for them, and getting a first round pick out of it is pretty good value in my opinion. I just didn't like the pick. I didn't like the David Roddy pick for the Grizzlies. Again, like you said, I don't think they really had needed or had room for a guy like him unless he wins out a competition between like Xavier Tillman and my guy Killian Tilly's still out there. Brandon Clark. I don't know. It just felt like little redundancy. I mean, Jake LaRavia is kind of in that same position for them. I really like the Kennedy Chandler pick, though. I think the Grizzlies backup point guard was something that they needed to do, whether they signed Tyus Jones or not, just because Tyus Jones isn't the youngest. And I like Kennedy Chandler a lot. I'm surprised he fell to 38 and that Memphis traded for him. I think he's from Memphis too. So another hometown kid can never root against that. So yeah, I think I like the Jake LaRavia pick. I like the Kennedy Chandler pick. Not the greatest fan of David Roddy. I like David Roddy as a player. I think that if I was over 6 feet tall and was an NBA player, I see myself in David Roddy. So not a fan of the pick. I'm a fan of David Roddy. But Memphis just made a lot of noise. I don't think anyone really thought that that their draft night would turn out the way that they did, but can't say that it was bad.
All righty. Moving on to the Miami Heat. They had one pick, which was the 27th overall, which was the 27th pick, and they took forward Nikola Jovic from. Now, how do you say it? Because I've heard the accent, I think, is throwing me off, but I just call it Mega Mozart. I see it how I pronounce it.
I don't even know what it's called. I know I'm just call it Mega. I mean, I don't know, but yeah. Hold on. I don't know if maybe we can come to where we think the same thing. I didn't think Nikola Jovic was going to fall this low in the draft. I think he was going to go like 20 at the lowest, because I know he has a lot of potential and people see a lot of him, me included. but I really like this pick. I like that he fell to 27, and I like that the Heat took him. I could see a little Heat culture in him. I could see him developing and kind of fits a positional need after like PJ Tucker and they took Caleb Martin out of nowhere this year. I don't know. I really like this pick for Nikola Jovic. I think that he's a good prospect. And I think Miami knows how to get guys. Like it's a running thing in the NBA world that Miami just somehow gets guys that fit what they want to do and who they are. I think Nikola Jovic I see it in him. And I think that he's a good prospect. And Mega, I don't even know, whatever it is, Mega Basketball, whatever. They produce guys. I'm pretty sure Nikola Jokic played for them too. My guy Filip Petrusev was out there playing too. I know they produced a couple more NBA guys. Not off the top of my head that I can think of right now, but I think that he's going to be good for the Heat, and I hope that he develops and has the body fat percentage to stay with the Heat.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. This was a fit type of pick where, I mean, as you said, I don't think PJ Tucker is coming back because he declined his option, and from the looks of it, it looks like he's probably going to Philadelphia. So this is more of a fit pick, and I think being a part of Heat culture, they're gonna get him right. As you said, he's got major potential, and I think he's what, like 6'10". So I mean, if he's every good as what the name says, I mean, watch out. There we might have another. We could possibly have a future MVP. And I know I'm just joking, but I'm interested to see how he develops with the Miami Heat. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks, they drafted guard / forward Marjon Beauchamp from the G League Ignite with the 24th overall pick, and then they made a few trades. They picked up Guy Santos from Minas with the 56th overall pick in a trade with Golden State, and guard Hugo Besson from the New Zealand Breakers with the 58th overall pick. And they signed and drafted guys AJ Green from Northern Iowa with a 2-way contract. G League, oh my God, can't speak right now. Guard Iverson Molinar from Mississippi State with an undrafted free agent deal. Marjon Beauchamp, I'm really excited to see what he can do. Very high prospect coming out of high school. Skipped college, and I won't skip college to develop and be ready for the 2021 NBA draft, if I'm not mistaken, or 2020 NBA draft, but I assume in 2021. But that's when the pandemic happened. The gyms all shut down, and after that, he considered not continuing his NBA dream, but called the G League Ignite, asked if there was still a roster spot available, and turned that roster spot into the basically 24th overall pick with Milwaukee. He's a hard worker, can shoot the ball. As I just said, hard worker. Giannis is probably gonna get him right, because I mean, they both have. I don't want to say they both have. They obviously don't play similar styles, but they both work hard, and I feel like he's going to be ready to earn for a rotational spot on the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I think I love Marjon Beauchamp going to Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Bucks, I think they definitely love like a story from these guys, like Chris Middleton, not highly recruited, like how the 2-3-time All-Star now.
Yep.
Jrue Holiday, people were sleeping on him, turned him into NBA champ. Giannis, Bobby Portis, just all guys that are fan favorites, that kind of underdogs in a way. And Marjon Beauchamp has definitely been that his whole life. And I'm happy for him that he's living out his dreams and everything. And I think he's going to be good in Milwaukee. I think that uh, Milwaukee is always going to be good if they have shooters and play defense around Giannis. And that recipe for the type of guys that they want has definitely paid off. And I think Beauchamp is going to be one of them. I think he's going to have good vets with Chris Middleton, who's kind of ish in that same mold with Drew Holiday, with Giannis. And I think the fact that he's a hard worker, Milwaukee's going to love him and he's going to love Milwaukee. It's like a match made in heaven. I don't know anything about Gui Santos, just that he's 6'8" and Brazilian. It was the 56 pick trade. I don't think we're going to say much about that. Maybe he turns into the next LeBron. You can clip this. Guard Hugo Besson is someone that I thought didn't really know. I knew he was going to be a second rounder, didn't really know where in the second round. Draws some comparisons to Tyler Hero in a 6'5", 6'6" type of guy who's a score first shot creator. Kind of not the super or he has a unorthodox-ish type of bag, if you will, but the Bucks taking a shot creator, I don't really think they got a lot of shot creation on that roster. But taking a guy in the second round with shot creating potential is pretty good. AJ Green, I don't know if you know AJ Green at all. I know he's a Instagram and YouTube kind of favorite that, you know, the underdog accounts love to show him love. Like they love to post about him, like you're sleeping on AJ Green from Northern Iowa type of guy. So again, maybe the Bucks they love a story. Iverson Molinar, watched him a little bit at Mississippi State and in the combine, didn't really up his value that much and everything, but small guard is pretty solid at, you know, on the offensive side, passing the ball, shoot a little bit, but I don't really expect him to turn out to be much. Going to the Minnesota Timberwolves, they took Auburn center Walker Kessler, 22nd overall, after the trade with Memphis, and they also took Matteo Spagnolo, 50th overall. My thoughts on Walker Kessler, I think that Minnesota needed some type of defensive help that isn't Patrick Beverley, and Walker Kessler was the best shot blocker in college basketball. Defensively, I think if he gets minutes early, that anyone around the rim in the NBA has to, you know, be aware that Walker Kessler's in there because he's going to contest everything. And I do like his potential offensively, that he can develop into a decent passer and that he has a potential to pick and pop. Maybe it's not a three, maybe it's like a short roll elbow type of jumper, but I think that it could be there. And I think the Timberwolves, I liked him in a couple spots. I liked him in San Antonio because I think they needed a big, and Walker Kessler feels like a San Antonio type of guy. I also liked him in Milwaukee as kind of a successor to Brook Lopez. In that mold, I think that would be my comp for him. And, you know, Brook Lopez won a championship with the Bucks, and I think Walker Kessler fits that same mold. It works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In my mindset, Matteo Spagnolo, I don't even know if I'm saying his name correctly, but I know he's like a 6'5" guard. Can shoot a little bit. I think the biggest thing on him is that he's more of a playmaker. And I think Minnesota can definitely do that. Could be a Euro stash type of guy. I mean, Minnesota is kind of known to take a good amount of the Euro stashes with, I think Ricky Rubio might have been a Euro stash. 2020 draft, Leandro Balmaro, who just came over this year, I think. Another Euro stash guy. So if he turns out to be a Euro stash guy, not surprised. But again, we'll see on that. George, Walker Kessler, the Timberwolves as an organization, talk to me.
I'm actually curious to see how this is gonna go. I think Walker Kessler, as you said, he was the best defensive, or I wouldn't say best defensive, but he was the best shot blocker in college basketball. And I think I won't say defense is a need per se, but they do need a little bit of size down in the paint because Cat doesn't play like he's 7 foot at times. And I'm curious to see if they sometimes run lineups where they have a Cat at the 4, and then they probably play Walker Kessler at the 5. Interested to see. I mean, they have a lot of off-season things they have to do. Kind of curious where this leaves Naz Reid, considering that he was the backup center, but he's a little bit undersized. So interested to see what happens with him. As for Matteo Spagnolo, I let you handle that because I honestly didn't know who it was. But it's with whatever happens at the guard spots in Minnesota, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans, they drafted guard Dyson Daniels from the G League Ignite with the 8th overall pick. They took EJ Liddell from Ohio State with the 41st overall pick, and they drafted forward Carlo Makovic from Mega Mozart in with the 52nd overall pick, and they picked up Darion Seaburn from NC State with an undrafted 2-way contract.
Yeah, I like Dyson Daniels on the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans could use kind of a bigger guard. I mean, I feel like you can already see that they like two-way type of guys, like lengthier guys, the Trey Murphy, the Herb Jones, BI is like that. And I they like versatility, and I think Dyson Daniels could crack the rotation for them early in his career. He's not so much of a shot creator, but I think when you have CJ McCollum, Zion, and Brandon Ingram, I think that's enough shot creation to make you a good team. And I like Dyson Daniels to play defense, be a ball handler, and just be anything that the Pelicans need him to be. And I think he is that guy. EJ Liddell, I'm very surprised he fell this low. I think there was a couple competing type of teams that could use a guy like EJ Liddell. I think he's NBA ready. I think he worked a lot on his body because people questioned after his freshman year at Ohio State if he'll be NBA ready, and I think he's proven that. He's proven that he can score, he can shoot the ball, and that he plays bigger than his size. And I think that, I mean, obviously from what I just said, you can kind of tell that I'm high on him. Surprised he fell this low. I just hope that he gets minutes early in the Pelicans to prove that. I think that they have a lot of guys that play in the big role for them with like Jackson Hayes, Valanciunas, Zion. I'm saying that Zion is going to play for them again. Trey Murphy's kind of in that role. So I think that EJ Liddell, I hope he gets minutes early so he can show that he can be a contributor to that team. Carlo from Mega Basketball, I'm not even going to try to say his name. Athletic big. I think that, again, I think that they have a lot of bigs and a lot of guys that I think need to play to develop. And it feels like that he's one of those guys. He played for a good team that produced a lot of big men in that same mold that he has. So he could turn out to be pretty solid. I don't want to say good or great, but just solid to earn a little bit of minutes in the NBA. Darion Seaburn, I think he's a little bit of a project that he's not quite NBA ready. Not the most athletic, but he definitely gets after it and definitely has a personality that I think New Orleans is going to like out of their undrafted guy.
All right. I forget. I didn't say my piece on Dyson Daniels at least. I actually like Dyson Daniels to the Pelicans. I honestly thought he would go like a little bit higher, maybe to the Spurs or to Indiana. But him sliding to the Pelicans at the 8th spot isn't the worst thing. He's not the best shooter, I would say, but he has a great form. And sometimes when you have a great form, the shots just don't fall. We say that with a lot of players in the league. But he can shoot. He has a great form, as I said. And so with practice and improvement and progression, I feel like he's going to improve into or evolve into a great jump shooter. As you said, he can pass. They don't really need him for shot creation, considering they have CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and all those guys. You just need him to sort of be great on the defensive end, considering CJ is not the best defender, and be great on the defensive end. And I mean, possibly be a catch and shoot guy, which, as I said, if you have, which I said, if you, which he probably will improve over time. And EJ Liddell, as you said, I was surprised that he slid all the way down to at 41. I thought he would be a little bit higher, somewhere in the 30s. But I think with all of the guys they took at forward, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because they are sort of loaded in the front court. They got Brandon Ingram and Zion as the two cornerstone pieces, and then they have Trey Murphy. I mean, Herb Jones plays as a shooting guard, but can play the small forward role. And I feel like I'm missing someone else that I'm not mentioning. But they are super loaded in the front court, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen with the rest of those picks that they took late in the second round and undrafted. Moving on to the New York Knicks, this was an interesting one for all Knicks fans, and they took guard / forward Trevor Keels from Duke with the 42nd overall pick. And they had taken Ousmane Dieng with the 11th pick, but he was traded to OKC and from the New Zealand Breakers of the NBL. But my thoughts on the New York Knicks, very interesting to see that they traded the 11th pick to OKC, and then they just took Trevor Keels, which I think is just, I want to say, more so fit than best available. I think they were banking on Johnny Davis somewhat falling to them at 11, but when he was taken from the Wizards, it kind of shook everything up. I mean, I don't have anything really to say on the Knicks, because it's one of those things where they drafted for somewhat of a fit rather than available or potential. But I mean, their entire draft process was just kind of weird to me.
No, and I agree. I think at 11, I don't think that I think they could have used the pick at 11 to take someone with a little more upside. And like New York being New York, it's always so confusing. You can never be happy with whatever New York does. There's always something to be mad at what New York does, which is, I don't know, that's just the Knicks and who they are. I thought they were going to take AJ Griffin at 11, then they traded out. I don't know. I feel like you could have done a little more with the 11th pick, and a good amount of the assets that the Knicks already have. Taking Trevor Keels at 42, I think the fact that he fell at 42, I kind of saw him in this range as like a 30s, early 40s type of guy. It kind of feels like, yeah, need, but it also feels like they kind of took a guy like this already in Quinn Grimes, and they still have guys like Cam Reddish who still fill a role like that too. So maybe a little bit of redundancy, but I think that Trevor Keels fits what the Knicks want in their kind of system. I think he can knock down shots, and he brings versatility and toughness on defense. And I think New York is gonna like him. Obviously, I say that with a grain of salt because New York never likes any of the guys that they draft ever. But I think that Trevor Keels is someone that if he develops in the right places and everything goes well with him, that he can be solid in the league. And I told George before this that I was going to talk about the Knicks a little bit and the decisions they made during the draft, but you know what? We'll just save it for the free agency episodes. and we'll leave it at that. Going to OKC, with the second overall pick, they took Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. I think we all knew this one was coming. They also, like we talked about earlier, the trade with the Knicks, Ousmane Dieng, which everyone also kind of mocked that the OKC Thunder would take. They took a surprise riser, Jalen Williams, at 12 out of Santa Clara. And with the 34th pick, they took the other Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. What do you think about the Thunder?
I mean, as you said, Chet was always probably gonna go second. That had been on the rumors and the mock drafts for at least the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm not surprised. I think the fit is there. Obviously, the concerns with Chet are pretty much like bulkiness and can he put on weight and muscle. But I think he has the potential to be a great center in the league. Great. I'd say he's a good enough shooter. From the three, he can put the ball on the floor. He will try to dunk on you if you're in the lane. And defensively, arguably, what would we say, top 3 shot blocker in this draft class, maybe second behind Walker Kessler. But I feel like the Thunder made a great decision picking him at second, because I think he's a better fit with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if he's really committed to the rebuilding process. Ousmane Dieng, I don't know where he's gonna fit, but I think that is just he's there because out of all the forwards they have, he is probably going to be a part of the rebuilding process because they have like guys like Mike Muscala. I think Derek Favors got traded already. They have Jeremiah Robinson Earl, but pieces they're really not sure on. As for the Jalen Williams pick at guard, I don't like it because the guard position for OKC is already loaded. They have Shea, they have Theo Maledon, they have Josh Giddey, they have Trey Mann. So, I mean, he's going to be fighting for minutes with guys who have already been playing for a year or so now, or a year or longer. Obviously, he's not replacing Shea. He's not replacing Josh Giddey. So he's literally fighting for minutes with probably 3 or 4 other guards on the team. And as for Jalen Williams at forward/center, I think it's just another one of those picks where we're going to see what he can do. He might be a part of the rebuild, might not, but we're not sure on the players that we have. So we're going to see what he can do.
So back to the Thunder on my point, I think Chet, yeah, match made in heaven. I think everyone that thinks that Chet, like it's all dependent on if he gets bigger or not. I don't think that's true. And I'm not saying that as a Gonzaga homer. I'm saying that because the league is now in a point where skill will beat out athleticism 10 out of 10 times. Whether they're too skinny, like Chet, like Kevin Durant, they're too small, too skinny, like Trae Young, like Steph Curry, all guys that have had success because they are so skilled at the game of basketball. And even the opposite way around, that like you're out of shape or whatever, like Luka, people question Luka because he wasn't athletic, or Jokic. Those two guys are unbelievably good at the game of basketball, athleticism aside. So I don't think that, obviously Chet needs to get a little bigger and everything, but I don't think that his success in the NBA is going to be super dependent on that. Ousmane Dieng, if I'm being honest, I don't really see too much of the upside that he has and the potential that he has. And if 10 years from now he becomes a top 10 player, you could tell me I told you so, but I don't really see how much of a prospect he could turn out to be. This pick kind of felt like a Killian Hayes type of pick, if you get what I mean, on that. So I guess I have to see on that. You can prove me wrong. I would be happy to listen to that. Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, one of my guys. I think Oklahoma City was the last place I'd want him to go, just because I think he's a Swiss Army knife type of guy. Um, More so a guard than he is a wing. And yeah, like George said, loaded at guard. I didn't really like it, and for the same reasons, I don't like the other Jalen Williams pick with Arkansas. I guess you question Darius Baisley, Isaiah Roby, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and just they're kind of all in the same mold, more or less, that stretch or fours, stretch bigs that can kind of do a little bit of everything. Not super good at one particular thing, but I don't know. The Thunder draft, they have so many picks, and it feels like it might get to the point that stop taking upside and start trying to compete now, type of move. And I think this feels like the draft where after from this point going forward, they're done trying to build potential and they're going to try to compete now. So yeah. And moving on to Orlando, biggest winner of this draft, maybe Paolo Banchero taken with a number one overall pick, and Caleb Houston out of Michigan at 32. Talk to me about the Magic.
Paulo Banchero, as I said it in the first part or earlier when we first started talking about the draft, it was somewhat of a shock considering that he didn't get a lot of noise going to Orlando until like Wednesday / early Thursday before the draft happened. But I think he's going to be solid in Orlando. That's the foundation piece alongside, I want to say, Franz Wagner or Wagner. Um, I think that him at the 4 and Franz at the 3 and Wendell, I think they're sold on at the 5 position. I think those 3 pieces in the front court are going to be the future. They just have to figure out what's going to happen with the guard spots because that is super loaded for them. I see Terrence Ross getting traded as well, but for them, it's just going to be guard pieces. Well, how can we make this work? Who do we trust in to basically lead this team alongside Paulo and Franz? And as for the Caleb Houston pick, I think that's just a pick they use to sort of kind of mold into, because what's happening with Jonathan Isaac, because he's super injury prone. And then, as I said, Terrence Ross is getting traded. So that's just one of those pieces where he's going to be a backup behind Franz, but I think they're trying to figure out what the moves are outside of Terrence Ross and those guys, the older guys.
Yeah, I think Paulo going one, always in the back of my mind. Going into the draft, just hearing Jabari going one, kind of sold me in that way. Not really sold me, but it was like, okay, so I guess Jabari is going one, even though in the back of my mind, I always liked the Paulo fit in Orlando. Um, I think you can run an offense through Paulo, and I think he's NBA ready now, and I think that's what the Magic need, because uh, they need a go-to guy that can get you a bucket and a sure thing now, because I don't think any of the guys that they have acquired, like all their young talent, I don't think either you can run an offense through any of them. As much as I like Cole Anthony as a scorer, I don't think you can. I don't think he's on the same caliber as a Steph Curry, Trae Young, small guard mold that you can build around, just on the offensive side. And I think Paolo is someone who can be a big time scorer. And I really like the pick here at one. And I'm happy that he went one and that the Magic went in this direction. And for Caleb Houston, exactly. You hit the nail on the head for my thoughts on the Caleb Houston pick. I think that, yeah, I think it's a good spot for him to develop and mold him into what or Orlando wants to do. I think they did a pretty good job drafting a Michigan forward last draft, and I think they might be able to do that again in this draft. Again, Caleb Houston didn't really have a super good freshman year, but if you check his resume, he's always played high level basketball. So the NBA, I don't. It doesn't turn me off that he had a bad freshman season to carve himself out a role in the NBA. Now to the Sixers. the 76ers made the trade for DeAnthony Melton and also traded their 23rd overall pick to the Memphis Grizzlies along with Danny Green. So they walked out with DeAnthony Melton, and they also signed G League Ignite forward Michael Foster on a free agent deal, undrafted. George, what do you feel about the 76ers kind of trading out of this draft and acquiring DeAnthony Melton?
I think DeAnthony Melton honestly is going to be. I mean, it's interesting what they do because, as I mentioned earlier, the whole Kyrie thing, he gave the Brooklyn Nets a list of 6 teams that he would want to be traded to. So it's interesting what would happen. But in my opinion, I think DeAnthony Melton is going to be the backup point guard for the Sixers, whether it's James Harden at the one or possibly Tyrese Maxey at the one, whoever is playing there. He's going to be the backup. And I think it's mainly just to provide some bench production because that's where the Sixers struggled this season. And for the last few seasons, matter of fact, they've struggled with bench production, getting playmaking outside of the playmaking at the point guard spot on the bench, scoring from the point guard spot on the bench. So, I mean, I think it's one of those moves they're trying to improve the bench because they know they're in win now mode because of how they traded for James Harden, and then obviously Joel Embiid was a MVP candidate for the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Sixers kind of played in a smart move, trading out of the draft and getting I would say that DeAnthony Melton has been pretty consistent for the Memphis Grizzlies all year. You know what you're going to get out of him. I think he knows that too and what to expect. And getting him and again, bench depth, incredible that you hit on that because I think that is the main thing that the Sixers need to be figuring out this offseason. The Phoenix Suns, no draft picks, no moves. We're done with that. We'll go to the Portland Trailblazers, who took kind of the most polarizing prospect this year, Shaden Sharp, out of Kentucky, not really from Kentucky, with the 7th overall pick. And at 57, they took Jabari Walker, forward out of Colorado. And they also drafted Gabriel Procida. I think that's how you say it. But then traded him to Detroit. George, thoughts on the Blazers? I know they traded for Jeremy Grant a couple of days ago, and we could talk about in the offseason, but just in terms of taking Shaden Sharp at 7, what do you think?
Them taking Shaden Sharp at 7, I think, is more of a potential sort of move. As you said, he didn't not from Kentucky, but at Kentucky, he didn't play. Reason why we say that is because he did not play at Kentucky. I can't remember the reasoning for it, but him being taken by the Blazers at 7, as I said, is more of a potential. He shown that he can shoot the ball at a great weight. And I feel like whether Dame is staying there for the foreseeable future, which I think he should leave, but that's for another time, whether he's staying or whether they pass the keys on to Anthony Simons, I think Shaden Sharp would be a great partner next to Anthony Simons. But I think that's where they go with that. And as for Jabari Walker, I mean, I don't know much about him, so I can let you explain that.
Yeah, back to Shaden Sharp at 7. Yeah, it's definitely like a long-term potential pick for the Portland Trailblazers, which it's kind of interesting to see them do just because they made the move for Jeremy Grant, almost like a win now type of decision that they made to trade for him. And Shaden Sharp just kind of felt like the opposite of that. So, I mean, if Shaden Sharp pans out to be anything that everyone has been talking about, then the Trailblazers got a good one at 7. But if he doesn't even pan out at all, I think we're gonna look back at this draft and say the Portland Trailblazers should have went with someone different, or if Dame leaves, they should have went with someone different because they're in kind of win now mode while you have Damian Lillard. Jabari Walker is 6'8" forward. kind of in like a 3-and-D type of thing. I think he's a bigger wing, if you will. Maybe can stretch to play the 4 a little bit. Athletic, but not super, super athletic. I kind of like him. I think that the Blazers have a knack for taking guys like this, like a 3-4 type of guy, kind of like a Nasir Little, if you would, if you want me to put that to you, a comparison for you, that maybe he's like a little bigger version of Nasir Little. And I don't know, seeing the Blazers take a forward, a 3-4, which is something that the Blazers always needed, and that was always the problem for them to figure out with Dame and CJ and everything, that there's always been a hole there. And just seeing them take it this low is kind of like, I don't know. I hope Jabari Walker gets to play and kind of be solid for an NBA team. But on the Blazers, I don't think they're going to be like that. And speaking about problems, we go to the Sacramento Kings. At 4, they took Keegan Murray out of Iowa. And that's pretty much the only pick they had. I know we're probably going to have a good amount of things to criticize the Sacramento Kings about. I know I do, talking about Jaden Hardy, who they drafted at 37 and traded. And they also signed Keon Ellis, guard out of Alabama, undrafted on a 2-way contract. Talk to me about the Kings. Enlighten me, please.
I actually like what the Kings did with the 4th overall pick. Jaden Ivey told y'all he didn't want to go to Sacramento. So, I mean, next best option, move on to the next best option. I don't like it, in my opinion, when the media says, oh, they got to take this player because he's the best available. No, sometimes it's about taking, if a player tells you that he doesn't want to play for you, which is very rare that happens, but I mean, what they did to Tyrese Halliburton after he said he would wanted to play his entire career there, and then they traded him. Obviously, we know the league is a business, but given the Sacramento Kings draft record and all of that, them doing that to Tyrese, I think, was a huge reason as to why Jaden Ivey didn't want to play for them. So they moved on to Keegan Murray, who was supposed to be 5th overall in mock drafts, but obviously taken 4th. And I think he somewhat fits what the Kings might want to do, considering that they traded for Sabonis in a quote unquote win now move. Keegan Murray can play off the ball. He is a great cutter to the basket. And obviously Sabonis is one of the best passing big men in the league. I think that's a very good move for them. I mean, they obviously still have a lot of things they need to work out, but I'm interested to see what the season holds for them.
Yeah, Keegan, I understand exactly what you think. And I don't have a problem with Keegan Murray going forward to them. I think I just more have a problem with the Kings in general as an organization, just because it seems like every draft pick they have, they never pan out. And I like Keegan Murray as a versatile volume scorer. I mean, at one point he led the college basketball in scoring. So you know what you can get out of this guy, and you know the potential that he brings. I just really hope that it pans out in Sacramento, and the chances of that happening. I mean, they don't have a good track record with it, but yeah, like you said, kind of weirdly okay of a fit on the team. I mean, Harrison Barnes is up there in age. It seems like they want to keep him for the most part. Again, he doesn't need the ball to be good, and De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis definitely, you know, that they're going to have their ball in their hands, but you do know that they can give it up when they need to, being pretty good passers in their own right for both of them. And Keegan Murray can definitely get a bucket once he has the ball in his hands. So I'm not super opposed by the pick. I really just hope the Kings figure it out with Keegan Murray, because I'd hate to see him go like a situation like Tyrese Halliburton. It's just not good for the organization and not good for basketball. Jaden Hardy felt like someone that could really help the Kings both now and in the future, being a scorer that you could get, like a flamethrower type of guy. At the 1/2, Davion Mitchell's not a big time scorer. He's more of a defender. And you know that they don't call him off night for a reason. DiVincenzo said that he's not going to be there. Who else they got? Terrence Davis isn't someone that you expect to be a 20 point per game scorer. And I feel like Jaden Hardy could have been that. And if I were the Kings, I would have kept the 37th pick and kept a Jaden Hardy in hopes that he would develop, but trading him to Dallas, so happy for Dallas that they got him. Just, I don't know, maybe I'm a little too high on Jaden Hardy that I'm not giving the Kings enough credit for whatever they do, but at the same time, you can't fault me for giving the Kings a lot of slack.
Yep. Moving on to the 27th or 27th. Moving on to the San Antonio Spurs. They took forward Jeremy Sohan from Baylor with the 9th overall pick. They took guard Malachi Branham from Ohio State with the 20th overall pick. And they took guard Blake Wesley from Notre Dame with the 25th overall pick. In my opinion, Jeremy Sohan going at 9 wasn't what I expected, and I don't think anyone expected that. But I think they drafted for defensive presence. Obviously, he has tendencies to Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green because he's a great defender, but not the greatest offensive player. But I mean, if he can improve similar to how Draymond Green did during his prime with the Golden State Warriors, it's a great draft pick. Malachi Branham, I think he's a good scorer that can coexist alongside DeJounte Murray if he's gonna stay. I think he probably, if anything, he's gonna be a backup next to Josh Primo, or Josh Primo's gonna play the 2 and he plays the 1. But and then Blake Wesley, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with him because the Spurs are somewhat sort of loaded at the guard spot. But what's your ideas on this?
Yeah, Jeremy Sohan isn't someone that I thought would go to 9, but definitely seems like a Spurs E type of player. So I'm not opposed to the pick. I think that the Spurs have a great development system. And I think Jeremy Sohan is definitely someone that they can mold into whatever they need him to do. And that's the type of player that he is. Good. I really like the comparison that you made with a Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green type. Kind of reminds me of Jared Vanderbilt in the way that he's defensive minded, can do it all. I think Sohan's a much better offensive player than Jared Vanderbilt was, but kind of the same vibe I'm getting from them. But I kind of like the pick here. I didn't want the Spurs to go guard with the 9th pick at all, just because I do think that they are loaded at the guard spot, like the 2, 2, 3 type of positions. I think they're loaded at. And Jeremy Sohan, I'm a fan of Jeremy Sohan, and with the Spurs, like the track record and the organization that the Spurs have built, I can't be mad at it. Malachi Branham, the same thing. Again, seems a little loaded at the 2, 3, but I think he's the type of guy that doesn't need the ball to be great. Chris Middleton comparison and the way that like they move and a little bit of the shot creation ability. So I like the pick there, and I think him falling to 20 is pretty nice because people had him late lottery, not falling after Houston at 17, which I think 20 is pretty good. You got pretty good value out of it. Blake Wesley, I definitely feel like they should have went with a different position and a different guy because they are loaded with Josh Primo, Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker, that type of thing. Kennedy Chandler, I thought they were gonna keep and not trade just because just there's been a little bit of DeJounte trade rumors here, but I thought that they might, or the fact that they didn't go point guard here kind of means that either they believe in Trey Jones that much or they're keeping DeJounte in that way. But all in all, maybe like a B grade for the Spurs, B minus type. But yeah, going forward to the Raptors, they took Arizona big man Christian Coloco at 33, and they signed Ron Harper Jr. out of Rutgers on a 2-way deal.
I mean, in my opinion, I have nothing to really say about the Raptors. This was pretty much a need pick because they don't really have much of a center. They're in the running to try and get Rudy Gobert, but they would probably have to give up a good chunk of pieces to make that happen. So I feel like this is just more of a need and fit piece rather than going for potential or going for availability.
Yeah, for sure. At 33, I knew they were going to go big, and they're going to take center Christian Koloko. Even when I watched them at U of A, like even before this season, he looks like the Toronto Raptors, if that makes sense. This is literally like textbook what the Toronto Raptors want. I mean, you look at Pascal, you look at Chris Boucher, Christian Koloko is in that same physical build as them. And the Raptors are pretty well known to be good at developing their players. And I think Christian Koloko is definitely someone that fits the Raptors mold and what they want to do and what they can get out of him. Ron Harper Jr., undrafted two-way guy, kind of reminds me of a guy that they already have in Julian. It's either Julian or Justin. I'm pretty sure it's Julian Champagny, out of Pittsburgh. It kind of reminds me of the same thing, but yeah, we'll go on to the Utah Jazz. No draft picks. Took Johnny Juzang, NCAA hero 1 year, not hero in my eyes, but undrafted two-way guy that they took. Utah Jazz have a lot of decisions to make in the offseason, so the draft definitely wasn't a priority, and I don't blame them for that. But to close this out, George, you lived in the capital. You've been out to Wizards games. You keep up with the organization way more than I do. At 10, they took Wisconsin guard Johnny Davis, someone that I am high on, and I think that you are too. And
Sir.
At 54, they took Yannick Nosa. At 54 center. So George, talk to me about can I call it your team too?
I mean, I don't root for them, but I mean, I guess I live in the city. I support.
Right.
I like the Johnny Davis pick. I thought if he wasn't going to go to the Spurs, the Wizards would be a great fit. I think while the comparisons is Devin Booker, he said it himself. I feel like he is a better facilitator than D Book was coming out of college. But I think he fits great alongside Beal if he does decide to stay. If he doesn't, I mean, you have the sort of cornerstone piece that you could possibly put at the 2, but if he stays, I think that's the point guard you would kind of want next to Beal, considering what they would possibly do in free agency. He could be a backup, and which would still be nice because then he could basically still score the ball but still be a distributor for the offense. And I don't know much about Yannick Sosa, but I was really high on the Wizards getting Johnny Davis.
Do you think that he is a point guard, that he will be a point guard in this league?
I think it just depends on the situation he gets put into. Like as I said, the Devin Booker comparison seems right. And when Phoenix was bad, they sort of put him in the position to be a point guard, even though he was a natural 2 guard. So I feel like he can distribute, but it just depends on the situation he gets put into.
I agree. I think naturally I see him as a 2 guard, but I think he does have the ability to play 1, as I think all modern guards should be able to do these days. But I am very high on Johnny Davis. Here's a comp that I always thought of, but I don't think many people see it. Let me know your opinions on it. But I kind of see a little Dwayne Wade in him, just in the sense that quick, super aggressive, not afraid of any contact at the rim, fights hard on defense. The mid-range is there, maybe not so much a three-pointer, but just as D-Wade did, he developed it over time. It just feels like he can have that. I mean, I think D-Wade is a top 3 shooting guard of all time. I don't know if Johnny Davis could end up being that, but I can see him in the same mold as a Dwayne Wade, just as much as I can see a Devin Booker comparison or whatever shooting guard comp that you have for him now. So I'm very happy that the Wizards took him here. I think you could help the Wizards play a little bit of defense, a little shot creation, again, bring some talent in the backcourt with Bradley Beal. So I'm a big fan of Johnny Davis at 10. Yannick Nosa, athletic big, can rim run, catch some lobs. I don't think he's gonna find time in the center depth that Washington has, but could be a Euro stash type of guy. But I think they really hit a home run with Johnny Davis.
Yep. Well, I guess that's it for the NBA draft. I mean, outside of the top 14, I mean, there were some sleeper picks in there, some picks that can be good late in the first round, early in the second round. But obviously the top three was the big boom that everyone was looking at, and Paulo going first kind of was a shock to a lot of people. But overall a great draft, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what these guys can do in the summer league and possibly preseason, regular season.
Yeah, congrats to all these guys. Me and George, we're just fans of basketball, but I feel like more than anything, you can't help but to be happy for each one of these guys. Just seeing, success in just all their lives and it makes me excited, even though I know a lot of picks are going to be misses and stuff like that. Uh, I don't know. I'm always excited about the NBA draft. Again, my favorite time of the year, and everything. Um, and if I was to sum up the entire draft, I think Kevin Durant summed it up for me. Uh, in that it is a wings league. I have a note there that says small guards aren't valued just because all of them fell, even more than traditional centers are. We could talk more about that in the free agency section, because I have some thoughts on that concerning other players now. But yeah, overall good draft. Wings league for sure. Excited to see these guys play and excited to see how future NBA drafts unfold going forward.
Yep. Uh, I mean, Katie said it best. Wings league. I mean, you look at our team, literally outside of a few guards, it's literally guys who are 6'7", 6'8", can handle the ball, can defend, long wingspans and all of that. So I mean, this is just where the league is headed to. And for that, I would consider this episode over. We're going to move into free agency probably after, if not before July 4th, after July 4th, because I think free agency starts early July. A lot of the guys who have player options have until this Friday to make their decisions on whether Friday, no, Thursday, have until this Thursday to make their decisions on whether they're taking their accepting their player options or declining their player options. But we'll see come after July, come early July, what happens. This is the 12th episode of the 4 Out 1 In podcast with your host, George Hamilton III.
And Carlos Costas. Man, it feels good to be back.
And we're signing off. Peace.